Tucker Carlson finally does an interview, and of all people, Russell Brand. This is interesting to me, and the reason it's so interesting to me is there are a few people out there who I believe think along the same lines as I do. They're more centrist. They're more not Republican, not Democrat, not even libertarian, but more so libertarian, but in that middle area. You know, you got your Tim Pools, you got your Joe Rogans, you got your Russell Brands. So Russell, I always find interesting because his awakening was refreshing to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, he was deep into the Hollywood scene. So I didn't think there was any escape for him. There've only been a few that I can think of that have actually escaped out of that little echo chamber over in Los Angeles. And Russell's one of those that says, you know what, I can make my own decisions. I want to weigh things myself. And just provide me with the information and no opinion and let me kind of sort through my own thoughts and figure out if I agree or disagree. But you're not going to force me either way. I'm going to figure it out on my own. And that's why I like Russell. Don't always agree with him, but for the most part I do.
He did like a whole 180.
Yeah, he
quickly too.
Well, him getting off drugs I think was a really big part of that. When he got clean and started getting healthy and started using his head, he became a pretty sharp cat.
Yeah.
I think now that cloud has dissipated and he's starting to see through the trees. And so for him to have Tucker Carlson, I find that fascinating that A, he interviews Tucker Carlson, because that's I wouldn't really have expected Russell to do this. And B, for Tucker to pick as his, first person to interview him as Russell. So everything about this is interesting to me. I'm very curious to hear what they have to say, so I'm not going to drag us along anymore. Let's do this.
Tucker Carlson says that RFK is more of a threat to the mainstream media establishment than Donald Trump. So, with RFK getting support from both sides of the aisle, is Tucker Carlson right? Could RFK be the man to bring down the establishment? Should I just ask him?
Russell needs to bring the excitement up some. He's just
Brand.
too
Beyond
dull
imitation.
like
I never in my life thought that I, a longtime viewer, would be addressing 6.4 million awakening wonders and bringing them on a journey to truth and freedom. But that is indeed about to happen. Stay tuned.
I'm so grateful to you for coming here. Do you like it? You happy?
I love it.
Have you got everything you need? Can I offer you any more snacks, nicotine, gum?
I've got my nicotine. I've got my Pellegrino. I had my coffee. I'm in my happy place.
I'm so glad that you're comfortable here. Thank you so much. It means a lot that you've given us this interview. Thank you very much, Tucker. Mate, so I suppose what we're asking there is that it seems that you said that Trump was no longer relevant in the political conversation. He was no longer the lightning rod. He was no longer the berserker of American politics. Loads of people on our platform absolutely love Donald Trump. They see him as the solution to America's problems. They see him as the great swamp drainer. It seems you have occupied varying positions on Trump at various times. Where are you on Donald Trump now? And particularly perhaps how that relates to the emergence of radical anti-establishment figures within the Democrat Party, notably RFK.
Where am I on Trump now? Well, I love Trump. Personally, I mean, I made a huge mistake last November in getting involved in American politics, something I've never done before, and making calls, this guy's going to win. I think this is going to happen in this state. Meet your new governor in New York, stuff like that. And I was wrong on almost every call. I'm not a very astute political analyst. I'm not interested in politics. I never have been interested in politics. I'm interested in ideas. I'm interested in people. And so there's a primary going on in the United States between Trump and a bunch of other people, primarily Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, but others, Vivek Ramaswamy, for example. And I haven't said word one about it. Don't plan to. I think looking back on this 10 years from now, assuming we're still around, I think we're going to see Trump's emergence as the most significant thing to happen in American politics in 100 years. Because he reoriented the Republican Party
I agree with that.
Against the wishes of Republican leaders. But when I think about Trump right now,
He brought
so
a
it's
spotlight
July
to
of
everything.
2023, I'm struck by his foreign policy views. Trump is the only person with stature in the Republican Party, really, who's saying, wait a second, why are we supporting an endless war in Ukraine? And that, leaving aside whether Trump's going to get the nomination or get elected president or would be a good president, I can't even assess that. All I can say at this point is I'm so grateful that he has that position. He's right. And everyone in Washington's wrong. Everyone. And Trump is right on that question. And it's a big question. That war is reshaping the world. It's reshaping the economy of the world. It's reshaping populations. I was just in Romania last week.
Reshaping the pockets
which is, of course, shares a border with Ukraine.
Democrats.
The refugees in that region, the number of people killed in that war. Europe will never be the same because of this war. And it really matters. And Trump alone among popular figures in both parties understands that, and I'm grateful for it. Whether he gets the nomination or gets elected, words really matter. Saying something true out loud matters. And he is saying true things about Ukraine, and God bless him. That's how I feel.
So Trump generated, I suppose, a new type of populism. He rebooted politics. He reordered the Republican Party. And but perhaps, is it fair to say that, other than the significant fact that he was less militaristic significantly than other comparable presidents, at least recent presidents, I mean by that, do you think that he delivered in office? Why do you think he remains so fascinating? Do you think that the Americans, broadly speaking, that are attracted to Donald Trump are attracted by his foreign policy stance, or do you think that there's something else? And do you not think that RFK, who's my understanding, has been on the show a couple of times, he's now on Rumble, and I find him to be a very admirable man. He similarly is vehemently anti-war, anti this conflict, and seems to also have identified the unspoken intention to be the deracination and annihilation of Russia for globalist and economic reasons, rather than the rather naive assumption that it's in any way a humanitarian conflict.
It's for democracy. That's my favorite. It's for democracy. Okay. Say the people who hate democracy. Well, I love Bobby Kennedy, and I've had him on my show many times. He announced for president on my show, which took a lot of stones on his part, given how despised I am by a lot of Democratic primary voters. I think he's a wonderful person. I'll say that. Just as a man, I admire him. He said the greatest thing any politician or any public figure's ever said to me at dinner a couple of years ago. They've gone after his family. The pharma companies and their agents in the media have really gone after his family, his siblings. They convinced a bunch of his siblings to denounce his views. So painful, and I'm so close to my family, I can't even imagine that. And I said to him, what's that like? I thought I took a lot of shit. I can't even imagine what that would be like. If my brother denounced me, I'd probably shoot myself. I couldn't handle it.
Also, if it was Buck, he would be able to provide the weapon.
He would. Yeah. Well, yeah. My brother's not going to denounce me. It's my best friend and wonderful man. But anyway, so I said to him, what's that like? And he said, and I'm quoting, I probably shouldn't be quoting a private conversation, but he said this to me. He said, I've got 7 children and they all love me. I don't care.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, you want to distill my values into a sentence? That's the sentence. So I really admire him. I don't agree with him on everything. I do agree with him, I'll just be honest, on most things, on the big things.
Yeah.
And so, no, I love what he's doing. I love his bravery, which is just remarkable. The amount that man has suffered for what he thinks is true, the amount of money he's lost, the friends he's lost. He's been ostracized in a way most people can't even understand because he ticked off a drug company? Really?
He's running as a
and he's
Democrat,
persevered,
isn't he?
and I really admire him.
Is it me?
He was an
or does the
environmental
future
lawyer
feel more
for an
insecure and
attorney
uncertain?
forever.
Wars, pandemics, lies, trickery. My
He
cats
was
keep
Marshall
having kittens.
on
Last
Look
one
at,
personal.
How I
For
Met Your
those who are
Mother.
in the United States, there is a way to secure your hard-earned nest egg. American Hartford Gold make it easy to protect your savings and
Another
retirement
gold
accounts
company.
with physical gold and
Everybody
silver.
wants
With
your
one
gold,
phone
people.
call, they can have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door, or inside a qualifying retirement account like your IRA or 401k. American Hartford Gold is the highest rated firm
That
in
is
the
the
US
one
with an
thing that I've
A+
noticed with
rating
all
from the
these
BBB and
channels that
thousands
I
of
subscribe
satisfied
to now
clients.
and watch.
Right
It's like
now,
I'll be in the
they
middle
will
of
give you up
watching
to
their
$5,000 of free
talks or
silver on your
interviews,
first
and then
qualifying
purchase
order.
gold.
This offer is
Don't
only
forget,
for US
purchase gold.
customers. Call
Use code word
866 505-8315.
Brodown
That's
needs somebody to sponsor
505-8315. Or simply text BRAND to
Guitars,
99
PRS.
88
PRS, if
99.
you're listening,
Get up to $5,000 of
we need
silver
that
and
sponsorship.
protect your future in this
I will
crazy,
push your
crazy
product.
world with some solid precious metals literally made in stars.
If RFK and Trump have risen, as they plainly have, to capture the popular imagination, and yet both to a degree are stymied, shackled, or reluctantly tolerated by their party, what does that tell us about the shifting sands of American political life? I think the area where you and I
Tucker
most
laughs when he's
plainly and
nervous.
overtly align, perhaps other than the belief in
He
God, I
laughs a lot.
suppose, is our deep understanding that the military-industrial complex and big pharma are able to exert significant power over the Democratic Party, democratic process that renders ordinary electoral politics basically
super PAC.
meaningless.
They donate to that.
These two figures are like
His accent
populist anti-establishment
losing me.
figures, in a sense.
I mean, not in a bad
What
way,
do you
just like
feel is
I
the
can't
likelihood of
concentrate.
either of them being able to pass through the internal mechanics of their parties, you know, in the case of
Getting lost in
RFK,
his voice.
through the legal hurdles that are being placed in front of Trump at the moment, and what is the role of
He does a lot of
independent media,
imitation,
in particular, say, a figure like Elon Musk, who seems, at the
Yes.
moment at least,
He
to have
speaks.
the power to fight on that terrain? I know there was a lot in that question, Tucker, but you've got
Well, I
a lot
would
to
say a couple things. One, the United States has had precisely in 250 years almost one populist president, and that was Teddy Roosevelt, also the most popular president in American history, who was president from 1901. President was who he served as VP was shot to death until 1908. Most popular president the United States ever had, and he was a populist. The two biggest populist figures in the moment are Trump and Bobby Jr., and then we had a guy called Ross Perot run about 30 years ago who roughly had the same politics.
I like
All
Ross.
four of those figures had one thing in common. They were all from the world they criticized. So you think of populist, you know, the English peasant revolt,
Yes.
which is one of the most interesting things ever to happen, where they stormed the Tower of London and killed the Archbishop.
I'm from there. That
Right.
started in Essex.
Yes.
Wat Tyler.
Yeah, Wat Tyler, exactly. We're not even sure if that was his real name. And
Tyler.
Wat Tyler. And, but he was a legit peasant. Like, we don't even know when he was born. And that was not an effective rebellion. Of course, they did not free the serfs after that, as I recall. But the effective populists are the ones who critique from the inside and say, I grew up in this world. Teddy Roosevelt grew up rich, of course, in New York. Trump, Perot, Bobby Kennedy's family is one of the most famous families in the world in modern history. The
rich.
Kennedys, and certainly the most famous family in Democratic politics. So these are people who know how the system works because they've benefited from the system. And so their critique is much more meaningful and much more effective, I would say, because they can bear witness to what they have seen. I don't think Trump has changed politics in Washington. I think the parties both have been very resistant to any kind of reform, and that's very foolish. That's a Ceausescu move. You see things changing around you, and you can't metabolize it. You can't sort of change with the moment, and then you meet a bad end when you become that rigid. I think that Bobby Kennedy and Trump will both have a very tough time getting the nomination. I'm hoping that both of them will, of course, I guess. I'm hoping that their message will be heard. I don't know. I don't even know what I hope for in the process itself, but I want them to be heard. And they can now be heard because there are channels of information that people can tune into and listen. I mean, I would amend one thing you said when you said that, these huge multinationals control our politics. Well, they also control our media.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, pharma, as you well know and often say on your show, is the biggest advertiser on American television. Probably true in the UK as well.
Yep.
And so, there's no incentive whatsoever to
you by
question their
Pfizer.
products. And now we have, because of the social media companies, Twitter and Rumble and probably others, we have less filtered sources of information with fewer gatekeepers and a higher probability you'll hear something true. I think that's a huge change. I mean, how can you... this is like samizdat. This is like... this is like information that the people in charge don't want you to see, and now you can see it. It really is the promise of the internet finally fulfilled. That's my hope anyway.
Interesting.
That was a pretty good interview.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more to it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Apparently, I just picked a clip from the beginning, and that's all we got to see, but that's fine. I know a lot of people hate Tucker. Never understood it. The guy's pretty genuine.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't come off as a horse's ass. He admits when he's wrong. He admitted right there that he was wrong about the whole 2020 election. He had thoughts on how he thought it was going to go. It didn't go that way, and he openly admitted, unlike most, or should I say all, politicians who will never admit they're wrong about anything, which is what makes politicians frustrating. They always try to push the blame off on someone else, which is where you get all these isms and obias from.
Yeah.
If you point out the problem, you're phobic or an ist. And that's what I liked about Tucker is he didn't care if you called him homophobic, transphobic, racist, communist, whatever they want to use on him. He just reported what he saw, what he heard, and what he could prove, and that was it. That's, like he said, he's interested in people. He's interested in processes. That's how I am. It doesn't mean because you're a Democrat or Republican that you're right in any way. Let me see your actions, which is what bothers me about the Republican Party. I've been close to becoming a Republican many times. I just can't bring myself to do it because all they do is talk.
Yep, there's nothing to back themselves up.
And talk.
And continue to talk.
And talk. Their actions never support what they talk about when they're going to up for election. They get on their campaign and they make all these promises that they never fulfill. And that goes for both parties. Mm-hmm. Over 90% of the debt for student loans is federal government, which means technically they could just say, you know what, we're going to just do away with all of it. But that money comes out of our tax money, so it has to be paid somewhere. And I don't want to pay for your decision. And that's what Biden ran on, was things like that. Police reform. You haven't seen any police reform. Hell, they wanted to defund the police. And now they want to blame the Republicans for that. So you're looking at two parties that do so much talking and never fulfill the actions. And it's frustrating. I'd love to see what Trump could do in a second term. I'd be very curious to see what Bobby Kennedy would do if he was elected.
Because he doesn't seem very democratic to me.
He's a classic liberal. That's how Democrats used to be. You go back 40 years, that's a Democrat. You go in today's times, they're going to think he's some alt-right, whatever label they want to use on him, saying that he's not a Democrat. He's an actual Democrat. Just can't bring myself to vote for a party that I know controls their people the way they do. And not everybody's going to agree, and that is what's so frustrating about these politicians is just because you have a blue or red next to you, you don't all agree on everything. There are Republicans that could care less if gay people got married. They're just not allowed to speak out about it.
Nope.
There's Democrats out there, or the Democrat Party members, that believe that, abortion's okay up to, like, say, 20 weeks, but after that, but they're not allowed to speak it. They have to go with whatever the Speaker of the House or whoever's funding their campaign.
Which is so stupid.
All a politician is a fundraiser. I've yet to find any other use for these leeches than that. They're fundraisers. They're always trying to get money. It's what they do. So it's going to be an interesting race. And if Trump and Kennedy win the nominations for the Republican and Democrat, that's one time I think that America actually wins, because whoever wins and becomes the president will actually put America first.
I hope so.
And that's something that we did not get with Obama. We did not get that with Biden. We did not get that with Bush. We have not had that really ever since Reagan, where a president said, you know what, America is where we need to focus our attention.
My problem is, how do we know that that's what's going to happen
We don't.
with either of those candidates? Because
Trump showed it. Trump did
Yeah,
show
in
that he put this
2016.
country first. And I think he would do it again. I think he wants to secure the border. I think he wants to make sure that all the elections are done properly. And my God, why do we still use Dominion for voting? Why?
yeah, seriously, why is that still a thing?
Can we not just go back to paper ballots? They do that in other countries and it seems to work just fine, but we've got to put stuff online where it can be hacked.
Yeah.
And then have reports showing that, oh, it's secure. I mean, there's a chance you can hack it. There's a chance. We're going to let you know. We're being honest. It can be hacked. But, I mean, what are the odds of that?
But what are the odds of that?
100%. There's your odds.
Obviously.
Go back to just writing it down. You walk in, you say, that's my name, that's my address, put a check next to that, here's my ID to prove that's who I am, and I'm going to put a check next to who I want. And these are the types of things that I believe Donald Trump and Robert Kennedy can focus on and try to correct. Make it a lot harder for people to rig elections, because we all know in 2020, Joe Biden became the most popular president in American history with over 81 million votes, and that was real. Don't you question it.
Totally real.
Don't you question it. That was
Except
fact.
the lies.
It was fact. More votes than Obama, more votes than Trump, more votes than anybody in history, because that is the greatest president we have ever seen in this country. 81 million people said so. What did you think of the interview with Tucker Carlson? I thought it was interesting. I'd love to watch the rest of it. Didn't realize it was just that little short 12 minutes, but I enjoyed all 12 minutes of that. And at no point did they bring up Vivek Ramaswamy.
They did.
Very briefly, just as an understatement of who might could get the Republican ticket. I would like to have heard Tucker and Russell say what they think about this guy, because we're starting to learn about him, and I'm really liking him.
And maybe they did. We just didn't get that clip.
Right, we're not that far into it apparently, or maybe they didn't. Who knows?
Who knows?
But I'm curious about this guy. Get in the comments. Let us know what you thought about Tucker, what you thought about Russell, and what you thought about my rant about the state of our country today. I'm sure that's something you'd all love to chime in. So do so. Get in the comments. You're welcome to do it. Like, share,
Subscribe.
do the thing.
Do it.
And until the next time, guys, as always, come at me, bro.
The Brodown is over! Let's bro out!
Costs $2.69 for a Totino's pizza, and I will not stop bitching about that.